Sorry, there was I think there is a bug with Instagram, like when somebody calls you and you're live, then you lose a sound. Kind of sucks. But anyway, so let's do this again. We are talking about estrogen and raising your estrogen levels using herbs, food, and I'm going to talk about a couple of supplements as well. What's the big deal about estrogen? So you know me as the estrogen dominance person, and I talk a lot about it. I've written books about it. That's my whole brand and focus. That's my life story, struggling with estrogen dominance. And suddenly I'm talking here about raising your estrogen levels. So it's like, what the heck is going on, right? And it makes perfect sense. I don't want to demonize estrogen in any way. Estrogen in itself is not a bad hormone. In fact, you would not be able to log in today to this broadcast and listen to me, understand what I'm saying, and sit straight, because your bones will be falling apart if you do not have sufficient levels of estrogen. So estrogen is really there that's what gives us our moist vaginas and healthy breast and your cycles. For those of you who are still cycling, you need that for your period, or you need that to get pregnant, even though progesterone is also needed, yes, but so is estrogen. And you need it for your cognitive functions. You need it for healthy skin. You need it for your healthy cardiovascular health, especially for older women. You need it for a properly functioning thyroid function. You need it for proper sleep. So as you can see, the list is for bones. We're going to talk about that too. Interestingly, estrogen is also needed for bones, not just calcium, you guys. There is more happening in the bones. Bones are not just made out of calcium. So there's a lot of things going on. And so I don't ever want to demonize estrogen. And I feel like the service that I am of educating women on estrogen dominance also comes with a bit of a downfall. And a downfall is a lot of women get terrified by estrogen. And so I don't want you to be terrified. And I really want to provide a lot of context and education why that is important. So let me just cover the first elephant in the room and talk about what can you be in menopause, perimenopause, see your estrogen declining, and still experience estrogen dominance? Yes. And I know it sounds paradoxical, right? But just bear with me and let me explain very simply how this happens. You can be having low estrogen levels as in perimenopause and menopause, but the way you're breaking down the little estrogen you have to clean and dirty estrogens is the problem. So it's like my good friend Dr. Anna Kabaka always talks about the clean river that is flowing. It hits a bank, and the bank splits it to clean flow and a clean stream and a dirty stream. And it's the dirty stream that is one version of estrogen dominance, where you're just producing too many of those estrogenic, dirty metabolites that are causing a lot of the symptoms of estrogen dominance. However, you can still be estrogen dominant and having this issue even though you're low on estrogen. The other way estrogen dominance can happen, even though you are menopause and perimenopause, is that your ratio of estradiol to progesterone is off. And that can happen even though both progesterone and estrogen are low in menopause. The ratio, typically estrogen drops a lot slower than progesterone, drops a lot faster and much lower as compared to estrogen. And so a lot of women in menopause and perimenopause experience estrogen dominance because they don't have sufficient progesterone. So we're going to be talking about progesterone today and how to raise it by using bioidentical forms as well. So let's talk about what's the big deal about estrogen, right? And what are some of the symptoms? And you might be surprised how many symptoms are actually related to low estrogen levels. And so Kamalani is going to post a link to an article that we sent out on last Sunday. If you're not signed up to our mailing list, you can find us on Hormones with an S, hormonesbalance.com. And on Sundays, we have an educational piece that's always going out. And on Sunday, we sent out one that talks about boosting your estrogen levels the most natural ways. So let's just talk a little bit about what are some of the symptoms of low estrogen. And I'm just going to read out the list for you. So your cognitive function starts declining. You know, the proverbial, like, kind of funny, not funny thing of a woman walks into a room and going like, where are my glasses, right? Looking for her glasses, and she's like wearing her glasses on top of her head, kind of a thing. Well, that's cognitive decline. So memory, concentration declining. women seeing an increase in LDL, so the so-called bad cholesterol, and declining HDL cholesterol in spite of a good diet, in spite of following a lot of functional nutrition. I want to stress the word functional nutrition advice, and not just going on low-fat diets, because that's not going to make the difference. Having night sweats and hot flashes. I know that's one of the biggest pain points in our community. If that's you, you're not alone in this. Leaky and overactive bladder. It's just like things are not as strong down there anymore, right? And so that's where you have your receptors for testosterone, but also estrogen. And that's going to control your bladder. Being overly emotional, right? And having a lot of mood changes and mood swings, anxiety, depression, but also lethargy. So a lot of women might feel like, I'm just not enthusiastic about life the way I used to be before, right? And then trouble falling and staying asleep. I mean, that's a classical one. And yes, progesterone can play a role here. However, estrogen can also be the contributing factor. And you wouldn't know until you try fixing one or the other and the other to know. Aching joints, very common. Fatigue, muscle weakness, no interest in exercise. A diagnosis of osteoporosis and osteopenia, obviously a classical one. And that's because estrogen drops, and estrogen is the bone structure holder. Progesterone helps to deposit all the minerals into the bone. It's like it builds the scaffolding where estrogen holds the bones together. Vaginal dryness, irritation, loss of feeling, dry, sagging skin and thinning skin, dry eyes, shrinking, sagging breast, irregular periods or stopping to have periods, of course, low sex drive, painful sex, abdominal weight and gain, including left handles and belly fat. And I know belly fat is one of the biggest pain points to the women experience. So Denise is asking, I'm postmenopausal, not sure if I should take hormones. So let's talk about that. I'm only going to talk about one hormone today, and that is progesterone. I have some thoughts on bioidentical estrogen, and I can share that with you in just a second. But my, and I know a lot of you here follow us because you want to find the most natural way of correcting your hormones before going into bioidentical hormones. And so my suggestion would be to try the natural ways as much as you can. If it's not working for you, then consider bioidentical hormones. And I am a big proponent of working with a practitioner who measures your hormones, and especially if you're taking DHEA, testosterone, estrogen, because how they convert makes a very big difference. And they can, if you're producing too many of those dirty estrogens I talked about, and mind you, DHEA just turns into testosterone, testosterone turns into estrogen, so they are all connected, interlinked, and those dirty estrogens can be contributing towards estrogen dominance and also fueling breast cancer and other estrogenic cancers. So this is something to be really be mindful of. Progesterone is a different story, and I'll talk about this in just a second. So, can we correct estrogen by using some natural ways and food as a starter? And so the answer is yes. Not everything, obviously. There are certain foods, and so the two foods. Actually, who wants to guess what are the two foods that are very high in what we call phytoestrogens, so naturally occurring gentle estrogens that are found in food? And so let's see who can answer that. Can you please address the? Yeah, so let's see who can guess that. So I'll circle. Well, I can actually move forward. Flaxseed, yes, that's correct. So flaxseed is the first one that is very high in phytoestrogens, and so is soy. Now, with soy, you've got to be careful, because if you're taking any soy in your diet, make sure it is a soy that is non-GMO, that's absolutely organic, and least processed as much as is least processed. And so that's something to consider. I'm a much bigger fan of flaxseed, and so not flax oil. Just want to make this very clear, because flax oil does not contain the lignans, and the lignans is where the phytoestrogens actually occur. So if you want to raise your estrogen levels, flaxseed on its own is not going to help you. It's going to be flaxseed oil is not going to help you. Flaxseed is going to help you. And the easiest way to really incorporate that into your diet is to add it into your smoothies. You can also just grind it up, keep it in the fridge for a week or so, and put 2 tablespoons a day. That should give you sufficient amount of phytoestrogens for you to start feeling better. And so do not buy flax meal just because it's already been pre-ground and you don't know how long it's been sitting on a shelf. Flaxseed oil is sitting in a fridge. It's sitting in a dark container. It's got a very short shelf life, right? And so the reason is flaxseed gets oxidized really quickly, and the content of the omega-3s are really quite high. And that's part of the reason why it gets oxidized. So so you need to be just really mindful that that's why the easiest thing to do is just to buy a whole flaxseed. There's no difference between the brown one and the golden one. So pick one or the other. They have the same nutritional profile, and then keep them whole. Just pre-grind maybe something like basically like a cup or two, put it in the fridge, and you can just grind it up. So what do you use to grind it? I use a spice grinder. It's like little one for like $27 or something that I got from, I think it's the one that I like to use is Krupp, I think, Krupp. I've had it for years. If you're using a grinder for coffee, make sure you buy one for spices and flaxseed, because otherwise everything is going to taste like coffee. Coffee overtakes everything. So that's about flaxseed. With soy, you've just got to be, let me just say things like soy milk, tofu. I consider them highly processed foods. If you look at the number of preservatives in them, it's actually quite astounding. And so I don't recommend that. Just to give you a sense of context, I grew up in Asia, and one of the wonderful things about going to markets in Asia is that they make their own tofu, and they sell it in these big pans when it was made overnight, and they typically scoop it up. So it's like the self tofu, the silken tofu. They scoop it out, they put it in a little baggie, and if you don't eat it by the end of the day, even in the fridge, it's gonna go bad. I mean, that just tells you how quickly it's not a very shelf stable food, right? So imagine how much of preservatives needs to be added onto this food in order for it to survive for as long as it does on the shelf. So I don't recommend that. However, if you can do like edamame, if you can find soy supplements that contain non-GMO, best organic soy, that it's got all the isoflavonoids derived from them, that is a really good choice to consider. So there's a couple of other foods that you can incorporate on a daily basis. And so most of the legumes contain some levels of phytoestrogens. My personal favorite will be mung beans. You can also sprout them, and sprouting them is super easy. If you go on our website, hormonesbalance.com, we have a sprouting guide, and we show you like exactly how to sprout. It's super easy. If you've never done it before, maybe it's a bit of an exercise first time you do it, but after that, it's really, really simple. And so that's something to consider. So that's really about food. When it comes to progesterone, because remember, when estrogen drops, your progesterone drops too, and a lot of the symptoms you're experiencing, it could be one or the other that's causing it. There is no food that's found in progesterone per se. The seed rotation method is something that we have on our website as well. You can download the guide on how to do seed rotation. If you just search for seed rotation on hormonesbalance.com, you'll find it there. The seed rotation has got sesame seeds and sunflower seeds in the second part of your cycle, or the time you want to increase your progesterone levels. And it's because they are high in zinc and vitamin E, and that is the precursor for progesterone production. So you're kind of more like giving it the raw ingredients for your body to produce its own progesterone. For some women, it works, and others, it doesn't. So it's really about trial and error and seeing, when you are experiencing these low symptoms of estrogen that I mentioned, try it for a couple of months and incorporate all that flaxseed. Incorporate, I'm also going to talk about a couple of herbs, so wait for that one too. Incorporate your mung beans, incorporate maybe some healthy tofu, soy, and see whether that is helping you alleviate your symptoms. If it doesn't, then look at progesterone as well. And then the second thing you can do is start looking at herbs. So there's a whole bunch of herbs that we mentioned, including the science behind it in the article that I'm referencing. And so I want to just mention that the big one is one of my favorites for sure is red clover. So red clover, also known as Trifolium pratense, is just a wonderful, I mean, you guys have seen red clover every time you go on a lawn and you see these 3 little leaves and a little, red flower, right? That's your red clover. If you're ever picking it, we're going into summer months. And so if you're picking red clover, the efficacious part of it is the flower and the 3 leaves. And that's what you want. The white ones do not have the same potency, so don't waste your time with that. Just pick those ones that are red or pink, and then dry it in your own home or make a tea out of them. They can also be, you can actually chew on them as well, and they actually kind of like it's got a slightly sweet taste to them, and they're quite nice. There are vegetarians and vegans who make red clover steaks with them, right? Patties. One of my favorite applications of red clover is the fact that it is also an herb that contains phytoestrogens. And so on our website, we do have a tea that we call a calming hot flash latte that uses red clover, and showing you how to make a red clover infusion, which is basically a fancy term for making a red clover tea. Is really as simple as that. Make sure if you're picking red clover, you're picking it from a lawn that's not been sprayed with any pesticides, and there wasn't a dog that just peed on it recently. Typically, when I pick mine, I'll just like walk away from the trails and find something that's a little bit further away, and then wash it and then dry it. So my other favorite herb is black cohosh. Black cohosh, many of you might have heard of it. Is part of many traditional Chinese medicine herbs. It's not something that grows around that you can just go and pick like the way you can red clover. So that's something you need to look it up online. Black cohosh is very bitter, so it's not an herb that you particularly want to make teas with or use culinarily. It's a difficult one to work with. But it's also one that has got, traditional Chinese medicine have used it for women in menopause and hot flashes for generations. So this is really a wonderful one to consider. Black cohosh is something that we use in our Wise Women Balance supplement. I'll show you that in a second. So that's something that, in a supplemental form is also nice to use it. However, I always like to combine it with a couple of other things. And so with things like a red clover, combining it with a bit of magnesium in it as well. That way you get the most efficacious result. The other one that has got phytoestrogens in them is actually maca. And so gelatinized maca, and I want to stress the word gelatinized, is important, not in a raw form. A lot of women have very bad side effects from maca. They tried maca and they're like, my digestion is just going upside down, and I thought I was gonna puke because it was so painful and horrible. And that's because, maca in Peru, where it originates from, is actually cooked for a long time to a point when it just becomes like jelly, and then it's dehydrated. It's mashed and then dehydrated, and then the powder of that, it's what's used for, in Peru, is used for giving you ability to actually deal with high altitude. It gives you a lot more energy. Women in menopause use it. Women who want to get pregnant use it, and so it's got incredible amount of applications. So maca is another one to consider. One of my favorite macas is Mighty Maca from Dr. Anna Quebeca. And you can, if you can just Google Dr. Anna Quebeca, Mighty Maca, she's got a great product that's got some other things in there as well. So those are some of the herbs that, there's a couple of other ones that we have on our website, including hops and valerian. Both of them tend to be, more sedative. And so, something you might want to consider doing at night. One other thing actually that's worthwhile mentioning is fenugreek. Because fenugreek in Australia is actually by a lot of naturopaths. And if anyone here, a naturopath from Australia, tell me if that is something that you use in your practice. But from our research, it shows that naturopaths in Australia actually use fenugreek on a regular basis to raise estrogen levels. What I also like about fenugreek is also the fact that in India, for example, fenugreek together with cinnamon is used to control your blood sugar levels. And so, so India has got now a big problem of diabetes, and it's not, I think it's because of the amount of sugar, to be honest with you, the British brought to India with their sweet teas, and the Indians are just now, Indian tea is just horrendously sweet. For those of you who've been to India, you know what I'm talking about. And there's a lot of sugar consumption in India, something that wasn't happening, back in the day. And so anyway, fenugreek and cinnamon in conjunction is used for controlling, for reducing glucose levels, but also making your insulin receptors a lot more sensitive to letting glucose in. So really quite an interesting one. And combining that with, with raising estrogen levels, it's a real winning formula. One of the things to consider also is the fact that when your estrogen levels drop, a lot of women also experiencing a lot more issues with blood sugar levels. And so how many of you here are experiencing belly fat, like something that you've always been really thin and trim and fit, and you exercise as much as you have before, and your diet is cleaner even than before, and you suddenly have this pouch that's sitting here that just wasn't there before, and you are pretty thin everywhere else, right? And so if that is you, and so share if that's, whoever, if it's comfortable for you, if that's you. And so that's one of the things that happens a lot is when your estrogen levels drop, that's when your sensitivity to insulin is not the same. And so we can correct that with something like fenugreek, which is a double, it gives you the double benefit. You are reducing your blood sugar levels, which probably will help you losing that belly fat, and you're raising your estrogen levels as well, okay? So many of you here are saying yes to that. Yeah, that's, and I just want to tell you, like, that's very, very common. It's very normal to be experiencing that. So, so I hope the food and the herb stuff is helpful. And I know that some of you may be like, what? I've never heard about this insulin thing, and I have no idea about what's going on there, and like I don't know where to get fenugreek from. And so some of you I know are just gonna be like going and ordering online already, and there's other people who just feel a little bit lost. So I want to just tell you there's a couple of supplements that we have for managing these, and they contain some of the things that I mentioned. And if you got our email today that just went out, we talk about the 5 supplements that help relieve some of the symptoms of menopause. So let me talk about the first one, which is Wise Women Balance. Let me see. I've got some of them here. Wise Women Balance. So this is, the reason why we call it Wise Women Balance, is because I feel like when we enter perimenopause, menopause, like this is a sense of wisdom that we acquire. I don't know whether you guys feel this, like, like a sense of, I know who I am. I don't care what you think about me. I have a sense of freedom of I pursue what is important. And your priorities somehow change as well. And I certainly feel that way ever since I turned 45. I feel like, just to put it in very simple terms, I feel like I don't give a crap about a lot of different things that bothered me a lot more when I was younger. So I'm gonna share my screen, and this is gonna be only visible to folks on, give me a second, only on folks on our Facebook and YouTube channel, but don't despair if you are on Instagram. I'm just gonna tell you what it is. So Wise Women Balance, that in herbalism we have the saying 1 + 1 = 5, meaning if you take one herb and you put another herb together with it, there's like this incredible synergy that happens, almost like an explosive one, right? And so there's an art and science behind putting them together. And so this is where I wanted to share with you. This is what we have done with Wise Women Balance. So we have a couple of things in here that might be interesting. First of all is vitamin B6, which is a precursor for a lot of different neurotransmitters. So that helps with mood control, can help with sleep. Vitamin B12, always make sure that if you're looking at your multivitamin, it's always in a methylcobalamin form and not cyanocobalamin. That's a very cheap form of vitamin B12 that's not very effective. We also have calcium D-glucarate in this, so to help you, move your estrogen metabolism in a clean estrogens direction and not in the dirty estrogens. We also using chaste tree extract. So chaste tree helps you to boost your progesterone levels. I actually forgot to talk about that. So as much as there is no food that can help you raise your progesterone levels, there is one herb that really helps with progesterone. And in Germany, for example, it's used as the go-to herb to raise your progesterone levels. In fact, it's a de facto or is a default herb that doctors use, even traditionally use, or allopathically trained doctors, and that's to use chaste tree, also known as Vitex, as a go-to. Just to be mindful of Vitex, not everybody tolerates Vitex really well. I, for example, can't take Vitex. When I do, even though I am in perimenopause, my progesterone has tanked for sure. And so my cycles, not tanked, but it's definitely on the decreasing side. When I take Vitex, I get ovarian pain, like a pulsating, my ovaries stop pulsating, and I sometimes get mid-cycle spotting. So that's obviously a sign that I can't take Vitex. I'm wondering how many of you here have experienced the same, that Vitex, you realize, is just not your friend. And you're going to respect that. As much as I would love to love this herb, it just that doesn't agree with me, right? And so we are using 200 milligrams, which is not very high. And so I think that's part of the reason why Wise Women Balance is one of the most popular products in our store. It's also got green tea extract, which has got antioxidant properties. It's got DIM, which helps you, again, clear up the estrogens towards the clean side. Then it's got the black cohosh that I was talking about that will help you raise estrogen levels. It's got broccoli seed extract, which is also known as sulforaphane. And sulforaphane is what also helps you to help detox your estrogens correctly. And resveratrol, which is also super beneficial for estrogen metabolism. So basically, it's the black cohosh and that Wise Women Balance that can be helpful. We are running a promotion until end of Sunday for $5 off on every one of these supplements that I'm going to talk about today. So that's about Wise Women Balance. Let's talk a little bit about Glucomaximus. So I talked about fenugreek, right? And so you can see on my screen, let me just, do I have Glucomaximus? I don't think so. No, I don't have Glucomaximus at home. So you can just check it out on the website. If you go to wellena.com, WELLENA, that's our store. We've got a couple of things here, including fenugreek that I talked about. We also have ginseng. We also have gymnema, which is one of the amazing herbs as well that helps regulate blood sugar levels. We have banana extract, kudzu, and cinnamon. So a real powerhouse. If you're suffering from high blood sugar levels and you're, how do you, and hypoglycemia. So like, for example, how do you know this? You have a meal and actually, no, when you're hungry, you start feeling shaky, unfocused. That's you urinating a lot. Those are some of the symptoms of having blood sugar level dysregulation. So, one of my personal favorite ways of regulating blood sugar levels is to have a savory breakfast and not start off your day with sweet stuff, but actually with savory food that's really going to help you sustain throughout the day. For some of you, it might be a little bit too little to make just a breakfast change. And so consider getting a supplement as well and make changes together with a diet. If you have my books, which all of my books have plenty of recipes in them, that's a really good time to consider changing your diet and then adding the supplements to it as well. The other supplement I want to talk a little bit about is the Adrenal TLC. So this is the product here. Let me just pull it out. Adrenal, somehow they're all red in color today. We have different colors in our supplements. But anyway, so Adrenal TLC is a formula. And by the way, if you are overseas, then I know you can get our stuff, but you can definitely then talk to your pharmacy, local herbal pharmacy, about some of the ingredients that are important that you're learning from me here, and then ask them what's the closest product that you can find with them. So what's the big deal about supporting the adrenals during times of perimenopause? And why am I talking about it, given that we are talking about raising your estrogen levels? And the reason is that the body is so amazing and creating different compensations. And so what happens is when your ovaries start slowing down, which is very normal, like in perimenopause and menopause, and slow down or stop producing, for example, estrogen, your other body organs take over and help you create estrogen as well. And so one of them is your actually your belly fat is becomes an endocrine organ and continues producing estrogen. The other one is your adrenals take over and start supporting the ovaries in producing sufficient estrogen. So it's really quite fascinating. The problem is that if your adrenals are the adrenals basically need support in order to function correctly. And so this is where, some supplementation, remember, I'm talking about supporting your adrenal health and your whole HPA axis in the context of also getting really good sleep, addressing stress levels, doing deep abdominal breathing, changing your diet to something very anti-inflammatory, because popping a supplement like adrenal TLC and hoping that you're going to be okay, like your adrenals are going to recover in no time, is wishful thinking. I have found that whenever I'm going through stressful time, first of all, this supplement takes time to kick in before you really feel the benefits of it. And number two, it works best when it's combined with all the things that I mentioned. So what's very special about it is that we have a couple of things that really support the adrenals. One is vitamin B2, vitamin B6 are very well known, vitamin C. You burn through vitamin C very quickly when stressed out. And so actually magnesium as well. We don't have magnesium in this product, but if you are going through stress, then make sure you're replenishing sufficient magnesium. So the adaptogens they were using here, adaptogens are herbs that adapt depending on what your body needs. And so we're using urethro, which is also known as Russian ginseng. Then we are using American ginseng. We've got ashwagandha in here. We've got rhodiola, which is my personal favorite. Rhodiola just gives me personally so much of energy when I take it, but it takes time for it to kick in. Like, it doesn't happen instant. It's not an instant energy. It's something that is like a result of taking it for a week or two. And lastly, we've got only 20 milligrams of licorice, so it's not a lot. And it can be somewhat stimulating, but it's also on the low dose. So if you have extremely high blood pressure, I don't recommend it. Taking licorice is not going to give you high blood pressure. High blood pressure comes from other things. It's how you eating your diet and your stress and your inflammation is really the cause of your high blood pressure. So that's another conversation altogether. But licorice is not going to give you high blood pressure. If you already have one, reduce it first before you use the supplement. So that's where the adrenal TLC comes in. Again, we are running $5 off until the end of this week, because on Sunday it expires. If you want to try it out, it's again one of our most popular supplements for a good reason. So that's about that. And we have a couple of other ones. If you on our mailing list, you would have received the email. We've got, let me see. We've got the other two that we have is Glucomax, Progest Pure. So that's a progesterone, something to consider. I did a whole talk on progesterone. If you look at our IGTV, there is a whole bunch of, there is a video I did on Progest Pure. I did talks on that. If you're on Facebook, we have just search our Facebook page for progesterone, and I talk about a lot there about progesterone. But basically, the short version of it is that if you are having trouble sleeping, if you're suddenly feeling really anxious, and your luteal phase is getting shorter, and so from time of ovulation until your next period is becoming shorter, if you are having problems sleeping, staying asleep, falling asleep, that this is a really good time to consider using topical progesterone. Or Vitex, if that's something that you want to try, Vitex might be helpful as well if your body is gonna love it. Okay, so let me spend another few minutes doing questions. And Kamalini, if we could just maybe pull out a couple of questions, and we can then I can. Okay, so am I saying, can you please address the formula that contains soil, phytoestrogens, good, bad? Dosage. So yeah, so what you want to look for in soy, in a soy supplement, the most important thing is that it's either non-GMO or organic soy that's being used. And the dosage, I don't remember the dosage of, because I don't really work with soy. So that's something you need to check online. And just listen to your body, how your body responds to this. Fat Feet Soul is saying I will try Vitex. Awesome. That's I'm glad you will. Okay. Can flaxseed cause constipation? No, actually, it's on the contrary. It helps with constipation. So, because there is so much, one of the other things I love about flaxseed is that it's got both soluble and insoluble fiber. And so it's that fiber kind of like, just basically sweeps your colon, sweeps your digestive tract, and is so wonderful in that way. And actually, whenever I travel and I'm constipated, if I forget to bring my magnesium citrate with me, what I end up doing is taking a whole flaxseed, I put a tablespoon or two in a glass of water before going to bed, swallow it, and what happens in the digestion, it bulks up and it gets like kind of slimy. If you've ever left flaxseed in a glass of water, you know what I'm talking about. It kind of becomes jelly-like, and that's going to evacuate everything. So is actually really, really helpful for that. What do you use to grind this? I already talked about that. I use a spice grinder called Krupp, Krupp. You can use any grinder is perfectly fine. Just use it away from coffee. Kabaleni, why don't I just do one from Instagram, because I saw there was a whole bunch of questions coming in. If you're low on estrogen, it's better to take flaxseed during the whole cycle or do seed rotation? That's a good question. You can actually take it throughout the cycle. Just one thing on flaxseed I want to say is that flaxseed is amazing for most people. I notice there's one or two people who can't tolerate it. And so you've got to be mindful of that. Meaning that, if your symptoms are becoming more estrogenic, meaning like suddenly your breasts are hurting and your period is worse and you suddenly start experiencing mid-cycle spotting and such, that is your sign, is your clue that flaxseed might not be for you. Majority of women don't have a problem with it. On the contrary, they find a lot of benefits from it. In my research, I have found that you need certain bacteria to break down the flaxseed in order for the body to convert the lignans into estrogen. And some people just don't have the right bacteria. So my hypothesis is that women who have a lot of digestive issues and a poor microflora also are not converting that flaxseed into proper estrogen, and gets it converted into something else, and the body is struggling with it. Can you use mortar and pestle for flaxseed? I suppose you can, but I mean, that's just a lot of work. Can you listeners type your questions in a question box? Oh, okay. Is there such a thing as a question box? I did not know that. Oh, okay. I just learned something. There's a question mark on Instagram. Ooh, okay. So Princess is saying, how would you use fenugreek? Like what way to activate it through the seeds? Okay, great question. So you can actually make a couple of ways. One is fenugreek you can grind it and make the tea is going to be really bitter. So the way you can buy it in a form of supplement, you can get it. Our supplement contains fenugreek. If you want to just do fenugreek and nothing else, you can grind it and then just put it in the water and drink it up. 2 teaspoons of that should be enough. Does chia seeds act same way in terms of flaxseed? No, it does not. What would it be? What would be a topical progesterone that's good to use? So, Princess, we have a progesterone in our store, so check it out. It's called Progest Pure. If you want to buy it from somewhere else, there's a couple of things to look out for. So you want to make sure there's no phthalates, which basically shows up as fragrance, any kind of fragrances, because that's just horrible. It's really bad for you. You don't want the progesterone to be made out of. There's no parabens in it. If it's a cream form, there's no parabens in it. There is no there's no mineral oil in it. If it's an oil farm, it's not like there's basically not made of any Vaseline or any mineral oils that is in it. And there's a lot of other chemicals that should not be there. But I mean, those are just like some of the simple ones. The shorter the list, typically the cleaner it is. Is fenugreek good to take during luteal phase? I wouldn't do that because fenugreek does raise your estrogen levels. So your estrogen is predominant in your follicular phase, which is the first part of your period, and then we switch to progesterone dominant phase. So I wouldn't do fenugreek during this time, or reduce the fenugreek amount to maybe 1 teaspoon a day, and that's going to help you with blood sugar balance more so than estrogen itself. I put the ground flaxseed in my freezer. Good enough? I think so. I mean, the whole point is that it shouldn't be oxidizing. So it's the excess of oxygen that's more important than too much heat. That's why I say keep it in the freezer and in an airtight container. But yeah, you can totally put it in a freezer. Thank you for letting me know about the box, about the question box. I'm so excited to learn something new. I just need to figure out why does Instagram, I lose sound when I get a phone call. Okay, do we have any other good questions? Because I do have another call in a few minutes. And so Victoria is asking, should I focus on estrogen dominance 6 years post-menopause? Well, the answer is if you have symptoms of estrogen dominance, then sure. And you can do two things at the same time. You can raise your estrogen levels with things like flaxseed, for example, right? But at the same time, you can also do a lot of the things that I teach about to really skew the raised estrogen that you're introducing in your body to also make sure that you're breaking it down in a way that is beneficial, so you don't have estrogen dominance even if you're in menopause or post-menopause, right? So that's really important, and that's when things like DIM, calcium deglucarate, Broca Power, which is like sulforaphane, right? If you look at our website, there's a ton of content. I'm actually working on some new protocols just to give you guys an idea of like how to, like if you have this symptom, what are the things to do in terms of nutrition and strategies and some of the supplements that fit in there. So that's something that I'm working on right now with my team. Okay, let me take one more question before we wrap up today. Kamalani. Can improving low levels of estrogen improve osteopenia? Can osteopenia be reversed? Absolutely, yes. Yes, very much so. So you can try it through the natural ways that I just talked about, and then get reassessed, get your scan done again. And if it shows there is little improvement, then, and by the way, besides osteopenia, besides correcting your estrogen levels, it's also important, Renee, to address your vitamin D3 levels, adding K2 into for example, our vitamin D3 contains vitamin K1 and K2 and is super beneficial for the bones. Also looking at boron levels, manganese, there's a whole bunch of different things. We do have an osteoporosis product in our store. It does not contain estrogen or progesterone, so you need to do that separately. But that's something and we have actually a whole article that we've written about osteoporosis and osteopenia. So take a look at that. If that doesn't work, those natural methods don't work, and your estrogen keeps being on the low side, then what I'll suggest to do is work with a functional practitioner and consider doing bioidentical estrogen, and be sure that you get monitored every 6 months. Because how your body breaks out those estrogen makes a very big difference. Okay. Hey, you guys, I hope this is helpful. Just a quick reminder, the promotion is going on until the end of Sunday. So you get $5 off on the 5 products that can make a big difference in relieving symptoms of menopause. At the same time, incorporate to your daily life things like red clover, flaxseed, soy in a non-GMO, non-organic form. Bring in some fenugreek, right? And and so there's some of the really simple things you can do. If you combine it together with a couple of supplements and really good sleep, you might be feeling like a new person altogether. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for being here today, and I will see you soon again.